So Jaime, once we've listened and we have some kind of an understanding of what the need is and we see what's available in country, what is the action step? What is the next principle?
Yeah, then we need to go and train. We need to understand the need. Once we understand the need that they have, we may not teach that skill, but we may know people that do. So we need to connect them together, because it's not about ITech being famous. It's not about a ministry overseas being famous. It's about Christ being famous. And so we go and we train. When we asked the Waodani, or rather when they told us that they wanted our family to move down through my dad, they said there's two problems when foreigners come. And foreigners were coming and taking care of medical problems, dental problems, and even flying them from one place to another place. They said these two problems exist. One, the foreigners only come when it's convenient for them, not when we have a problem. And number two, when they come, they can only meet a physical need. But they said our people have a bigger need than a physical need. They have a spiritual need. So they said, if you will come and teach us what the foreigners know how to do, then we will not only be here when there's a problem, but as we take care of the physical problem, we'll tell them how Jesus can fix our heart. And it makes sense. But how do you do that? But that idea really led to what is now ITech. Because it was not our idea, it was the indigenous people's idea. They saw the problem. And so we don't just work with the Waodani. We're working, I think we worked on 5 continents or 6 so far. In fact, we have tools on 6 different continents. The only one that we haven't worked with is Antarctica. Maybe at some point, I don't know.
Lord willing.
But seeing the needs, it's easy to go provide a quick solution to go in. But going and training, it's not easier. It costs more money, but it's a long-term solution that when we leave, the work continues, and there's no barrier. I know, Jim, you've been through Perspectives. They have this thing in Perspectives called the E scale, and it's the evangelism scale. And ultimately and I'll explain it in a moment, but ultimately it says the people that are closest to the people in an area are the best people to share the gospel because there are fewer barriers. So E0 would be sharing an Indigenous Christ-follower, sharing their faith with somebody who comes into their church. E1 would be sharing in their own community, but outside the doors of a church. E2 would be going to a nearby community where they still speak shared languages. The culture is still very, very similar. Well, but they're not from that community. Right. E3 would be going to even a farther area, and where maybe it's a different country, but they still look similar. They may even share some language. But E4 is you or me going over to, West Africa and sharing the gospel. There are so many barriers that they're really not going to understand what we're saying. In fact, I was recently in West Africa, and people were coming up and asking for a picture to be taken. I'm like, yeah, we'll take a picture, and soon there's a crowd gathered, because this was an indigenous mission conference. We were the only outside people invited in, so we stuck out a little bit like a sore thumb. So David and I, who just was on the last podcast, we were there and taking pictures, and we're smiling. Everybody was smiling until they stood in the photo. And when they were in the photo, they were straight-faced, and I didn't understand that. There was a graduation that took place. Everybody is straight-faced. Graduations that we've done around in Africa, everybody is straight-faced. It's like, why is everybody so sad? And that's from our culture, our culture. But after asking, I found out that a picture is a very serious thing. And so if they're going to be in a picture and they're smiling, they're making light and joking about the picture. Mm-hmm. And so, I've been all over Africa, over 50 countries around the world. And even just that nuance of a culture, I had no clue. Mm-hmm. So we need to train the people who are on the ground all the time so that they are the hands and feet of Christ to their people and the surrounding unreached peoples.
And Jaime, I know you mentioned the Perspectives course when you talked about that scale of evangelism, and I know you've done that too, Jim. Can you, for those who don't know what Perspectives is, can you explain that?
Well, absolutely. Perspectives is a course that's run all over the country. They have different speakers that come in and share and help teach each lesson. As a matter of fact, Jaime, would you know anything about the teachers that are involved in the Perspectives course?
Yeah, so a number of years ago, a friend who I had traveled to India with, he became a missions pastor out in the church in Colorado. He invited me to teach a lesson on perspectives. And really didn't know anything about the course at that time, but since then I have taken it. And I teach typically lesson 2, 3, and 15. And it's probably the foremost mission exposure study that you could be a part of. There's a lot of reading, but it's totally worthwhile because you see the history of missions all the way up to missions being done today and what it looks like going forward.
And it's a 15-week course or lesson course that you can take online. So a lot of churches host a local gathering and go through the course, which is great because you can go through it with other people from different churches coming together. But you can also, if you don't have one locally, you can find one online, and those are great as well. So.